Less than a year after the critical and commercial failure of Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers, Trancas International Films would put the franchise on hold to reevaluate Michael Myers' path forward.
We stopped at a light and saw him walking in that field behind the Lost River Drive-In. Julie said he was so creepy.
The early 1990s would see multiple attempts at reviving the franchise, though none of them would come to fruition. In 1992, when Miramax got the rights to the Halloween franchise, their first idea was Halloween 666: The Origin, which was to be a story following a news reporter who arrives in Haddonfield to cover the first celebration of the holiday in 5 years. Now, Mustafa Akkad was not a fan of this idea whatsoever, but Miramax was, and they began developing this screenplay to be the next Halloween film, until there were creative differences that caused it to die. When researching the history of the troubled production that is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, you will find many accounts just like this, of screenplay ideas or even fully written scripts that never came to be. But the one that has always surprised me, and I think many other Halloween fans, was Quentin Tarantino's famous involvement in the franchise, albeit brief. After writer and director Quentin Tarantino broke out onto the scene with Pulp Fiction, Miramax approached him about making the next Halloween movie. And for a long time, none of us knew exactly what that movie would have looked like. The reporting on it was very scarce. Tarantino didn't really talk about it. Most of us wondered, well, was this just a rumor? As the years would go on and the stories of Tarantino's almost involvement in Halloween would be told, we finally got some answers from Quentin Tarantino himself. Tarantino's idea for a Halloween 6 story would have been Michael Myers and the Man in Black leaving Haddonfield and going on a road trip down Route 66. At each stop along the way, Michael Myers would claim more and more victims, and this film was eerily similar to one we would see not long after, written by Quentin Tarantino, titled Natural Born Killers. It is undeniable that if you've seen Natural Born Killers and you're aware of Tarantino's idea for Halloween 6, they bear incredible resemblances. And I would even venture to say that if Tarantino had done Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, Natural Born Killers would not exist. Now, if you're like me, when you hear this idea, it causes a moment of pause. Michael Myers and the Man in Black teaming up, going cross-country to kill people indiscriminately? I don't know about that. But one of the positives of this idea is that the Cult of Thorn would not exist. Nobody would be controlling Michael Myers. We wouldn't have some explanation as to why he's doing what he's doing. No, he's simply just doing it. He's just taking it out of Haddonfield this time. Now, while that would be a positive for many fans who were critical with the direction Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers went, it would also ask a lot of questions. Who exactly is the Man in Black then? And why is Michael Myers going cross-country with him? If he's not the head of a cult that's controlling Michael Myers, why isn't Michael Myers killing him? Why are they buddy copping? Wouldn't make a lot of sense. Now, one would have to imagine that Tarantino would have obviously perfected this idea and made it into something that would be coherent. But coherence doesn't necessarily mean it would have been good. Tarantino has proven over the years that he is a solid writer and director. Many people love him, but I think most people at least agree he's got a few films that are pretty good. So I think him taking a crack at Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers could have been something cool. But I don't know if his initial idea is something that I would have liked to have seen. And then another question that this idea would create would be, why now, after almost 2 decades, is Michael Myers deciding to leave Haddonfield? The idea was that he always wanted to go home. Whether he had a motivation or not, no matter what film you're watching, he stayed in Haddonfield. He wanted to kill residents of Haddonfield. He wanted to go back to his house. It's where he was familiar. After all, he does have the mind of a child. So Michael Myers going on a road trip with somebody else to kill people in different states and cities doesn't really seem to line up at all with this franchise. And it's interesting that Tarantino was the one that declined, not Miramax. Honestly, if Tarantino had wanted to do this when it was all said and done, it would have happened. This wasn't Trancas or Miramax stepping in and saying, absolutely not, Quentin. We don't like this idea. We don't think it'll work. No, it was Quentin declining. Now, the reasons why he declined to get involved with the franchise aren't really public. There are theories, sure, but Quentin Tarantino has never exactly said why. I would have to imagine it was probably due to a pay dispute. I'm not confident that Miramax was offering Quentin Tarantino a whole lot of money or control, considering that at the time, the property hadn't really been financially viable for almost a decade. Now, while Tarantino did drop out, he suggested Evil Dead 2's co-writer Scott Spiegel as a director, but Spiegel quickly turned it down because he was not at all happy with the script that they had, which was written by Phil Rosenberg. And as we know, that script would then go on to be redrafted over and over by Daniel Farrens. Now, say what you will about Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, I will always respect the fact that Daniel Farrens tried to tie up every loose end, tried to answer every question, tried to honor what came before it, and ask questions for what would come next. That was not an easy task, and he did the best he could. It's also very important to point out that Daniel Farrens' script never actually made it to screen. There are parts of his script that did, but this was a movie that was continually being rewritten and reshot throughout the entire process. So no matter whose screenplay you're basing this movie off of, it never showed up on screen. This thing was ever changing, and they had to meet a release date, so it came out in September 1995, and that was that. But in researching Quentin Tarantino's brief involvement, and even Scott Spiegel's brief involvement with the Halloween franchise, it makes a Halloween and horror fan wonder what could have been. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite horror films of all time, and I attribute a lot of that to Scott Spiegel's writing of that film. Having him be the director of this movie would have been insanely interesting. Furthermore, just looking at Quentin Tarantino and the body of work he's produced in his career, having him be a part of Halloween would also have been quite crazy. Now imagine a world where Tarantino writes it and Spiegel directs it. This would be a Halloween movie that we had never seen, and probably will never see one like that as long as this franchise persists, because those are not names and those are not styles that you normally see mixed into the Halloween franchise. But as a fan of a lot of both of their works, I would have liked to have seen it. However, the rough draft idea that Tarantino had, I don't know if I would have wanted to see that idea. The hope, of course, would have been that over time, the studio, the writer, the director would have talked, would have redrafted things, and would have eventually settled on something that made sense for the franchise and the filmmaker. So if Tarantino would have been a part of it, I would have hoped that that would have been the case. But as it sits today, we can only wonder what if. But at least we know now what the bones of this idea were. We know that it was legitimate. The involvement and interest was real. However, it never came to be. In my opinion, though, I think it's for the best. Love or hate Halloween 6, it kept a lot of what fans had come to expect from the Halloween franchise. Michael Myers, Haddonfield, Illinois, and a bloodlust for his family members.